We are thrilled that we were notified by our church-wide partners that our church-wide representative this year would be the presiding Bishop, Elizabeth Eaton. Elizabeth Eaton was re-elected to serve a second 6-year term as our ELCA presiding bishop at the 2019 ELCA Church-wide Assembly. Bishop Eaton is the ELCA's 4th presiding bishop, and she was first elected at the 2013 Church-wide Assembly. She earned a Master's of Divinity degree from Harvard Divinity School and a Bachelor of Music Education degree from the College of Worcester in Ohio. Bishop Eaton was ordained in 1981, and she served 3 different congregations in Ohio before being elected the Northeastern Ohio bishop in 2006. She was re-elected synod bishop in May of 2013, just shortly before her election as the ELCA presiding bishop. Her 4 emphases for the ELCA are: we are church, we are Lutheran, we are church together, we are a church for the sake of the world. These 4 emphases are fundamental to identifying who the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America is. In 2015, under Bishop Eaton's leadership, the ELCA underwent an extensive vision process to help the church journey faithfully and effectively together in the years ahead. And this process resulted in Future Directions 2025, a strategic framework that helps shared leadership across the ELCA realize common aspirations and better face the challenges that this church faces. In addition, with the presiding bishop's guidance, the ELCA launched Bishop Eaton's Leadership Initiative, which encourages all ELCA members to seek out and inspire gifted people in our congregations and in our communities to consider a call in the ministry of the gospel. As Chief Ecumenical Officer of the ELCA, she represents this church in a wide range of ecumenical and interfaith settings. She's the Vice President for North America on the Council of the Lutheran World Federation, and she serves on the governing board and the Development Committee of the National Council of Churches of Christ in the USA, and on the Religions for Peace USA Council of Presidents. As presiding bishop, Bishop Eaton travels extensively, representing the ELCA in a variety of capacities, and this includes a visit to a Syrian refugee camp, commemorating the 500th anniversary of the Reformation with Lutherans from around the world in Namibia, participating in an ecumenical service to commemorate the Reformation in Lund, Sweden, cathedral with Pope Francis, visiting migrants in Honduras, and attending the 5th consultation of women pastors and theologians in Tanzania. She has even traveled to the Northeastern Minnesota Synod for the installation of your new bishop. Bishop Eaton's husband is the Reverend T. Conrad Selnick, an Episcopal priest, and they are the parents of 2 adult children, Rebecca and Susanna. And I happen to know that she's also a proud grandmother. We are honored and we're grateful for her presence with us tonight as our ELCA church-wide representative to the 2021 Northeastern Minnesota Synod Assembly. We warmly welcome presiding Bishop Elizabeth Eaton.
Thank you, Bishop Odgren, and greetings to the people of Northeastern Minnesota Synod. I'm coming to you now from Chase on the Lake here in beautiful Walker, Minnesota. Actually, no, it's from my living room here in Skokie, Illinois, but I did make it there and it was a wonderful experience. Raleigh has been working with me, so I'm going to try to share my screen for the first part of my remarks, which will be an update on the work that your Synod has done to support the work of the entire church, also the work ELCA does, and then we're going to have I'll have another little section, and then we want to make sure there's time for questions and answers. Is that me echoing? No. I am now going to try to share my screen.
Who's that?
Is that showing, Raleigh? Wait, hold on. Did that show up? Give me a thumbs up if you can see.
I think we're good to go. I'm not really sure because I'm getting audio upstairs, but I don't know whether I'm getting audio down here. Oh, I think I know why. We're good for. You ready?
Am I ready? Yes.
I'm texting her.
I can just turn it off.
Now let's keep her on.
Okay.
Okay? I just sent her a text. I think she's good. We just can't hear her.
Because she's not saying anything.
Zoom is Siri? Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Is the radio up?
Can you hear me? I'm not on mute. I did not, I remember to unmute myself. And I think the folks can see me okay, Raleigh. And I'm hearing a lot of behind the scenes magical workers chatter, but can you see my screen? Someone give me a thumbs up if that's true. All right, okay. We'll give this a try. I am not technologically adept, but we'll just give this a try. Okay, so thank you for the invitation to be here. As your bishop noted, I have been to the Northeastern Minnesota Synod for the installation in Leech Lake in Walker, Minnesota, and it was beautiful. It was in October, beautiful. I woke up the morning of the installation to I don't know how many inches of snow, which is a surprise to me, but it was just a wonderful experience. And I want to say thank you now to the work that your synod has done during a remarkable year, or as we would say, an unprecedented time, or in troubling times, all of those things we've been hearing throughout this pandemic. Your generosity supplied $463,000, just over that much, to the work of the greater church through your mission support. I'm deeply grateful. And I know that Victoria Flood, who works with your synod, also sends her greeting and is grateful for the way you've kept up mission support. We were concerned at the beginning of the sheltering in place, the beginning of the pandemic, what kind of loss would we suffer? And people in your synod just really were faithful and held the line. So we thank you for that. Your support, as you've heard, supplies work for ministries in the United States and around the world. So thank you very much for the work that you do and help us to do on your behalf around the church and around the world. We had a COVID-19 response, and your synod was the recipient of one of the grants. This is a remarkable project that we had. We usually take a time, you know how we do it in churches. You get a committee together and then you study things for a while, and then you might present papers and charts, and then you study them some more, and then you consider it, and then you come back. No, within 6 weeks, we had put together this COVID-19 response and had raised over $1 million, and all total, $1.8 million has been raised. Nearly 400,000 people have been served. More than 830 ministries have been funded across the church, and 63 out of our 65 synods were recipients of these grants. This was all of us supporting ministries in other places that we were afraid would be most severely affected by the pandemic. So thank you, thank you, thank you. You also, in your synod, have a ministry that has received a domestic hunger big dream grant, and it's called CHUM. I think Salem Lutheran Church is working on this. I asked the bishop today, I said, well, I know you people fish up there, but is it like chumming the waters? And that's like, she said, no, that's just the acronym. But thank you for that work. We know that food insecurity and hunger was a definite issue throughout this country and around the world because of the pandemic. And you stepped up, and we were glad to support you with this grant. Lutheran disaster response has been quite active internationally as well as domestically. 49 countries, including India, received 132 grants totaling $4.9 million. And 88 of those grants were COVID-19 related, so about $2.4 million. We're still now working to see how we can help, particularly now in India, the devastation there. But you showed up and helped us to do this work together. When I was here last October, I learned about the Together Here ministry, and I'm so excited now that that deacon candidate Colleen Bernou is going to be your DEM, and hopefully she'll also soon be ordained a deacon. This is a very important ministry, and in fact, you are sort of leading the way for the rest of the church. You're an example of how we can do authentic conversation, ministry, interaction, living, working, walking together with our native brothers and sisters. So thank you for the work that you do. Fund for Leaders. We've been working with Fund for Leaders, and you, in fact, have a Fund for Leader recipient, and his name is Lars Anderson, who's attending Wartburg, I think by Zoom, but he's there. Thank you for your Fund for Leaders support, but also importantly, for raising up leaders. Bishop Odgren mentioned that you are intent on doing that, and that this synod, she didn't say this, but this synod is a net exporter of pastors and deacons to the rest of the church, which is very, very generous. And you also support lay leaders, which is incredibly important. It's really exciting to see the work that you're doing in your synod to raise up all these new synodically authorized ministers, but also to provide really quality, in-depth, thoughtful education for lay folks who just want to strengthen their walk with Christ or have a deeper understanding of Scripture, the confessions, or Lutheran, the work that we do as Lutherans. So thank you for that, and thanks for sending us Lars. I don't know if you'll get him back, but we'll see if he comes back to you. Okay, let me try this. Okay, you also support missionaries, and I've had a chance to meet some of them actually already. Dr. Stephen and Bethany Freiberg are in Tanzania, which is an incredibly quickly growing church in sub-Saharan Africa. And you know about Chandran Paul Martin. He and his wife Mercy are well. They have both received their first dose of the vaccine. They report that they're well. However, two bishops in the companion churches in India, two bishops have already died from COVID, one in a hospital that we helped to fund. So we keep them in their prayers, and we will make sure that we are in touch with the churches in India, as well as our synods, as to how we can help best when they're going through this horrible pandemic. And you can see other folks who you've supported, and I'm so grateful for that. I've met Pastor Stephen and his wife Marta when I was in Costa Rica, and I've met Pastor Linda Sankulu and her husband, the bishop. So you're doing a marvelous job, and this means that you are helping to support ministries so that the gospel can be preached and the sacraments administered in those places in the world where we can't be, just as they are praying and supporting us for the work that we do where we are located. So well done, Northeastern Minnesota. Couple of folks who are serving at the church-wide level. Lawrence Solberg, he's on the church council. I believe he's going to have a chance to address the assembly. One thing I've noticed during this Zoom time and being in lockdown is that we have seen some prodigious, luxuriant beards being grown. And Lawrence no slouch on that. We call him Santa Claus now, but he's a valued member of the church council. So thank you for sharing him with us. And then Pastor Paul Luter is on the Committee on Discipline. He'll be ending up his term at the Churchwide Assembly in 2022. And fortunately, he has not been called this whole year. So that's always a good thing. The Mission Investment Fund is hard at work across the church. And Lou Ann Ferguson is your regional manager. We have, as you can see, 13 mission investment loans here in Northeastern Minnesota Synod, which makes it possible for congregations to build, to improve, to expand. We also were monitoring this during the pandemic and during the sheltering in place. And the rate of paying back loans was 98%. The incredible faithfulness of our people is just truly stunning. So well done, Northeastern Minnesota. Okay, we're happy that that Bishop Amy Odgren is been serving. She came aboard at a really, really difficult time. I mean, you were in office, you weren't even in office. You've done your whole bishop's ministry right now in a pandemic. So we're grateful to her for that and for that leadership. And she's really already a voice in the Conference of Bishops. So thank you to Bishop Odgren. And we are still, we'll see, but we're still planning on having an in-person youth gathering, which, as you know, we could not have this past summer in 2020 because of the pandemic, but we're going to go ahead in 2022 in Minneapolis, Minnesota. You'll be receiving more information about that, but the plan right now is to keep that going. So that is just a whirlwind tour around the work of your synod and the way you are helping, supporting, encouraging the rest of the church and doing work that reaches around the world, as well as the work that we do together. I'm going to try now to unshare my screen. So everyone, cross your fingers. I can't even, I don't know. This could not be good. It seemed, aha! Well, thank you. Whoever unshared me, thank you. That's perfect. Okay. Well, I did have a wonderful chance to have a conversation with Bishop Odgren today, which she was very generous with her time since she had a synod assembly looming. But there's something, she's very proud of this synod and the work that you do. And I wanted to talk a little bit about that in the context also of the new design, Future Church, where we have gone through a design change in the churchwide organization, which we also intend and hope and pray is something that is not just sort of up there in Chicago, or I suppose that would be down and over from you. In Chicago, it's not just the churchwide staff, it's all of us together. We worked throughout the pandemic with a consultant working on this, had lots of input from folks. And we knew before the pandemic started that if we continued just the way we were, that our church has been on a steady decline in numbers of people and as well as in funding. And so to do nothing was not an option for us. We also know that that the decline is accelerating or could be accelerated, particularly amongst communities of color or rural folks. And that it's just not an option. So we work together to try to design, I know this sounds like jargon and I'm new to this too, but a flatter structure so that all of us are doing the work together. And that's really the heart and soul of this. It's just, it's not up to the church-wide expression to develop programming or materials and then send them out and expect that synods and congregations are going to implement them. That's not how the world works anymore. Also, we know that the resources we have in this church, particularly the gifts that we have of our members, have not been tapped. We believe that a good idea can come from anywhere. So we don't have to wait for someone to think it up in one part of the church. We need to start this work everywhere we are, where we're doing this everywhere. And as one church together, we're not changing the Constitution, but as one church together, the idea is that our plan now, our mission is to invite or make contact or meet 1 million new people. 1 million new people. Well, you know, I can't do that. And you know, your bishop can't do that, and neither can you by yourself. But all of us are out there in the world where people don't even know they need to know Jesus. Or the Jesus they think they know is not the Jesus of the gospel, the Jesus of grace, the Jesus who has set us free from sin and death, the Jesus who has set us free for service to the neighbor. So we're working on this, and we got to call on everyone, not just our synods and congregations, but our colleges, universities, seminaries, our agencies and organizations. They have a long reach. Lutheran services in America, so social ministry organizations, touch 1 in 50 Americans every year. Now, why can't we also find a way to touch those people and invite them to know Jesus and invite them to experience Jesus through the witness of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America? So that's what we're looking at in this new design. And you've already incorporated several of the design criteria and the hopes that we have. You're raising up new leaders. You're working with lay people and strengthening their ministry. You're making sure that that congregations are served, and if it's not by the traditional root pastor, which is that's not going to be the wave of the future forever, but you're still being served by people who are closely they're mentored, that they are given wonderful not only practical education, but also sound theological, scriptural, confessional education, and are serving people where people are. So I'm grateful for the way that you have done this. You're also, as Bishop Odgren mentioned, you're engaged in LEAD. That's an important thing. We have sort of drifted in some ways, not because we're bad people, but we haven't had to do things in different ways. So to embark on this multi-year plan to develop a mission for the synod and to carry this out is really part of also what we want to see and do as we work on the future church design. We know that strengthening our lay people is absolutely critical. And I hear that that Catherine Anderson on the synod staff is just like a genius at this, especially working with outdoor ministry, which that was affected by the pandemic, and many of our COVID-19 relief grants went to help outdoor ministries, Bible camps around the church. But I can't see you all, but if you want to raise your hand, how many of you went to church camp or Bible camp when you were young? Yeah. And how many have had your congregations have made use of those camps for retreats for your councils or your women's group or your men's groups? Yes, we know that people who go to camp have a profound experience of the beauty of creation and therefore a profound experience of the Creator. And it's formative, not just for those going into the ministry, but for all of us as we try to walk our walk of faith and live out our vocation. So thank you for Catherine and the work that she's done with that. I think that answers some of the questions that I was asking the bishop. I want to hold up, though, also, when you are doing together here, that is a model for the rest of the ELCA and different synods. And you've been hard at work, and I understand that soon-to-be Deacon Colleen is done a lot of work with that. She and your bishop, Bishop Odgren, serve on our task force for the repudiation of the doctrine of discovery. We've been at work, we stalled, we passed the repudiation in 2016, stalled for a while, but now have an excellent committee, and we're working on several fronts. We're working on a worship service that will be available to congregations, but will be previewed or premiered, pardon me, at the Churchwide Assembly in 2022 in Columbus, Ohio. And that's being developed by Kellyanne Conroy, who is, in fact, she's a native person getting her doctorate at Luther Seminary. So she's helping us with that, along with the Bishop Eric Gronberg in northern Texas, northern Louisiana. So we'll have that resource ready for folks. we're taking a look at and developing a Native American commentary on Luther's Small Catechism, or Native Americans' reflections on Luther's Small Catechism. We have such a resource already developed by African descent people, as well as by Asian American Pacific Islanders. And so the Small Catechism is foundational for us. But now we can see it and hear it through a different lens and from a different voice. That's in the works right now. We're working on another declaration to American Indian, Alaska Natives, and Hawaiian Natives. That's the official designation, much the same as the declaration we made to people of African descent at the 2019 Assembly. That's something we're developing. We're trying to find a way to acknowledge that there is a settler narrative, but as you said so eloquently in your land acknowledgement at the beginning of this assembly, there were people here long before any of us came, either overland or in various kinds of boats, whether willingly or not. And they have a rich and do have a rich culture. So how do we really take a look at that with authenticity and respect, not as some exotic thing from the past, but a living spirituality and culture that's with us right now? I was dismayed when a member of Congress seemed to indicate that there really isn't any Native American culture anymore in the 21st century. And I know you don't think that because this is so important for your synod, but across the church, that's the narrative. So we're working on all of those things. I have been working with COVID relief, particularly with in the Southwest, where they've been they really were hit hard down there. And the group is made up of Native folks, as well as those of us who are European descent people. Thank you for the leadership that you're giving on that committee to Colleen and also to Bishop Odgren. So now I've been talking at you here for quite a while. I wonder, Raleigh, are there any questions? Do I need to look in the chat, or how are we doing this? Oh, yeah. So you really want to know how I feel that the Ohio State quarterback was taken by the Bears. I'm a little conflicted being a big Ohio State fan, but I do live in Chicago, so I'm always going to root for the Browns, but I hope the Bears have a better season. That's one. I don't know if you're going to ask that question, but. Oh, and yes, the Cleveland team, baseball team, is in the process of changing its name. Okay, thank you very much. Any conversation about the fatigue level of pastors and the many retirements pending? This is noted, and it's a known issue. And your bishop and other bishops are aware of this. This has been a marathon run at the pace of a sprint. And it's been very taxing for pastors, for deacons, for lay leaders, for SAMs, as we all try to bring the word to people, to bring the word of hope and resurrection. So it's been difficult. I do want to say that the church has been remarkably creative and resilient. Many of our congregations had no online presence whatsoever. And within a couple of weeks of starting to shelter in place, almost all of our congregations were able to come to some way of presenting digital worship. And the good that God has brought out of this bad is that we know that there are people who are attending worship online who would never walk into a church, who would never physically be present. So here are people who have not heard the gospel, who are hearing that. We're also gearing up, because this pandemic will come to an end, How do we welcome people who are already members back to worship? How do we hold on? One pastor's calling it, he has one congregation and two campuses, a physical campus and a digital campus. And then how do we make contact with people who are not at all connected with the church? So we're trying an experiment. It's called Open Door Grants. I don't know if we can send you information about that, but we're looking for best practices because we don't have any best practices for coming back after a pandemic, because I don't think we wrote them down in 1917 and 1918. So this is our chance to do this and find out in real time what's happening across the church. And one thing we want to study as well is what we make initial contact with these folks. And when we're trying to make contact with 1 million new people, how do we sort of make that stick? What's the next step so we stay connected with these new people coming in? So that's an important thing. Okay. What action is being asked of us as people of God in the social justice for African American and Asian American violence? We are tired of the violence and division of thoughts toward our BIPOC siblings and need tangible ways to help heal pain and divisions that are so deep. Oh, thanks, Raleigh, about the other thing. No, you're right. This has been there have been several pandemics going on. The pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, but I would say, at least for many of us who had the privilege of not having to be aware, the reckoning with the racial inequities and disparities in this country, the protests. I think that someone has said recently, he's a movie actor, that there has not been an increase in violence. There's just been more recording of it, that this has been going on. And I know, in all the parishes I served, there were law enforcement people. And these were good, family-loving, church-going people who worked in law enforcement because they wanted to make a difference. I also know that at the church-wide center, there are a lot of people of color who have told the stories of their encounters with some law enforcement. Your colleagues at the church-wide organization are decent, church-going family people who work for the church because they want to make a difference. So this difficult untangling, one thing where we might be able to start, is that racism is not an individual act, or it's not, when white people, particularly when we hear that about racism, we get real defensive. I'm not a racist. But the system is a racist system. There's systemic racism, there's institutional racism. And but most of us don't have to see that because it has not affected our lives. But that's part of the reckoning that has to start right now. I'm going to give you an example. My mother says I talk really fast, so I still have some time. We hear the word white privilege. And I know people, I used to bristle when I would hear that. It's like, what do you mean? I work hard. And then I was reading about the GI Bill and how it was administered when the GIs came back from World War II. Now, my dad joined the Army. He was in the Army Air Corps. He was fought overseas. He was in North Africa and also in Italy. Brave man. Never really talked about his wartime experience. He talked about the funny things they did, but he talked about that. He came back, married my mom. They were able to buy their first house. My father could go to night school and get his bachelor's degree. They were able to make other investments. And from that time, because of the GI Bill, and because banks would loan my father money, they were able to build up some savings. Now, the escort squadron from my father's bomb group were the Tuskegee Airmen. They were the Red Tails. They fought the same war. They wore the same uniform. And when they came home, they were ready to start families and they wanted to purchase houses and go to college on the GI Bill. Now, by law, they weren't excluded. But in fact, it was almost impossible to get loans or to be accepted into majority white institutions of higher learning. So that meant that when my dad and mom started out in a tiny little house on the west side of Cleveland, they were already building some economic stability, which they could leverage as the family grew. But for African American people who served in the same war, they were denied that ability. That's white privilege. It's not that we're bad people, but that's just the way that things are set up, and it's still set up that way. And in your territory, you also understand the difficulties for Native American people. It's something we have to face. And I contend that because we're baptized, we've already been named and claimed by Jesus, so it won't kill us to have these honest conversations, and also to work with local, state, and national governments and legislators in order to make sure that this really is a country of freedom and liberty for all. So get active, but also I think probably most of us do not have close acquaintances with people from another culture. And maybe it's time we take those baby steps that Jeff Tiemann talked about to do that kind of work, to get to know people who are not like us. Okay. Is the Synod planning to offer any programming to assist congregations to recover from the trauma of the pandemic? I don't know. That would be up to your bishop. I know that there's some work done in Portico, and we're aware of this. What is our greatest opportunity in the church as we come out of the pandemic? To serve and promote good mental health and well-being. Well, Lutherans, we talk about grace all the time. I mean, that's our thing. We're grace, justification. We're the least likely to accept it. And so we have not lived through a normal time. I think some of us just went along as if like this is nothing happening. The amount of physical, spiritual, and emotional stress experienced by all of us, as well as the loss of life and illness, is unprecedented. It's unprecedented. That, along with the political divisiveness and the racial reckoning going on, we've been through a lot. Can we be willing to seek help and receive help? Good mental health, good spiritual health. Can we check on our friends and on our neighbors? I happened to be in South Dakota after they had that freak blizzard in October of 2013, when they lost 90,000 head of livestock in a single storm. And the Lutheran Social Services was working with people there, but they had to set up a hotline so that neighbors could say, my neighbor is struggling and he or she will not admit it, but I want you to know. Do we check on each other about all of that? And do we take a time to pause? I don't know about you, but for the rest of us who have to do these Zoom meetings all the time, this is like a circle of hell that Dante never wrote about. We have Zoom after Zoom after Zoom. At least in the office, we could get up and walk someplace else. So physical care is also something that's important. Okay. Oh, let me see. I don't know if you can see it. It's on. Let me see if you can get a clearer picture. Where'd you go? Ta-da! It was a birthday present from my husband. Okay. I think, oh no. Yeah, I'm glad it got fixed too, so. Oh, I'm fine. Who takes care of you and how are you doing during these times? I think I'm blessed. My husband is here with me, and we found out that we really are made to be together. We haven't spent this much time in each other's physical presence, I think, since we were both ordained because of committee meetings or travel. So that's been a real mainstay for me. I've had chance now, which I always wanted to do, just to read through this. I know this sounds like I'm a nerd, but through the Lutheran confessions and try to understand how our witness to the gospel is so an important voice. I've been able to take more time just being quiet. That's been a very good help. My my kids, my daughters they enlisted me in a challenge to do some form of exercise for 30 days in a row. So I'm back on the treadmill. So all in all, I mean, I've got a comfortable home. Our neighbors are great. I get to go to church with my grandson. He doesn't know it, but we're on Zoom at the same time. And then just to hear the stories from your bishops about the work that's being done in the synods and by your pastors, deacons, and in your congregations it's been humbling, but also greatly encouraging. We have been faithful this whole time. So thanks, I'm doing pretty well. I've almost lost all of my COVID weight. It's getting better. Okay. Have the rabbits shown up in your garden? They never left. They're just sauntering around with coffee mugs as they wave at me through the window. Yes, they're back. And I don't know how I'm gonna, that and the squirrels, they eat everything. And the squirrels would wait, they don't like tomatoes, but they would wait just till the tomato was showing promise and they'd take it off the vine. So my husband and I were thinking of building a structure, maybe with razor wire around the top, enlist the skunks as guards on the guard towers. And I don't know, we'll see how it works this year. I think strong netting. My older brother suggested an air rifle, but I don't think that's allowed in the city. Okay, yes, you are with the group in Honduras. We had a chance to go there. I think that was 2 years ago. Actually, it was during Lent. Yes, and to see the work that the church is doing, and also the partnering that the Lutheran Church in Honduras is working on with the Moravians, no, the Mennonites, pardon me, and the Lutheran World Federation. So we do a lot of work through them with returned migrants. And we had a chance to meet these really remarkable people. And we came to learn that if you come back, there's a stigma. You failed. You're a failure. But we work with them and the Mennonites and the LWF to provide psychosocial counseling. These people are deeply traumatized. And many of the women who make the trek are sexually abused. We're teaching them new skills and new trades and giving them some micro loans so they can start up in business. And I want to be very clear. I want to be very clear that the people we met who are returned, not we're going on a nice field trip to the United States. The economic, the poverty, the effects of drought in some places and flooding in other is making it impossible to farm. And then just the sheer violence, the violence that these people faced. We heard horrible stories of abuse, and it was impossible for people to stay because their lives were at stake. In some cases, gangs, parts of gangs control different parts of the street. Well, if your school was in the next block and that wasn't part of your gang, you can't go to school. So the terrible choice that parents make to send their children north or they themselves to come is not to be taken lightly. And they're not drug dealers. I'm sorry. There probably are some mixed in, but they're not. And I've worked with the courts here in Chicago, hearing asylum cases, and the judge says they are not drug dealers. So Amparo, AMMPARO, is the ELCA's program to work with migrant minors, and they're doing a fantastic job. The church in Honduras, it's hard for all of them. They're a mighty group, but some of them also have been affected, certainly by poverty, but also by the gang violence. So keep them in your prayers and talk to them. And I hope some of you can speak Spanish. Okay, 5 more minutes. Oh, you're very kind. Okay, I don't know. I'm not so familiar with the Ingrian Lutheran Church in Russia, and I don't know with the unrest right now how that's going. The Archbishop, if it's the right one, is he the really young fellow? Is that a yes or no? Do you know Bishop Odgren? Anyways, they're doing Nope, is a different one. The challenge for Lutherans in Russia, along with other denominations, is that the country is very, very Russian Orthodox, and the President Putin has embraced Russian Orthodoxy as a sign of what it means to be Russian. And so, if you're not Russian Orthodox, if you're Lutheran or other denominations, it's kind of a struggle. But there is a place. Oh, where is it now? I don't know if it was in St. Petersburg, but there was a beautiful, beautiful Lutheran church, all made of wood, just beautiful church. But during the siege, maybe it was Stalingrad, the siege, people were there, they couldn't get any firewood. They were freezing. And so the church made the decision that the church would be completely dismantled so people can have firewood. There's a plaque still there honoring the Lutheran church in that city. So, we have had a witness, and that's encouraging. Yeah, this is really difficult. How do we help members who've had a family member who died and they couldn't be with them when they passed away? I think being in touch with those folks, letting them know that you're holding them in prayer, and when they want to tell their story, however painful it might be, or maybe seem awkward for us to listen, and if they want to weep, it's just so important just to sit with people, even if we're doing it on a screen, just to listen so that they can remember their loved ones. The loved one hasn't vanished into infinity or oblivion, and let them tell the story. I think that's really important. And also, many thanks to doctors, nurses, techs, nurses' aides, all staff people in the medical profession who have just been drained by this pandemic, but still showed up to work every day. Okay, we got a minute. What will be the new name of the Cleveland baseball team? Oh, I'm glad you asked. We don't know. The two contenders are the Spiders, which had been the name of the team, I don't know, in the 19th century, and the Guardians, because we have these wonderful bridges and they've got these statues of the Guardians of Industry. Plus, it sounds like Guardians of the Galaxy, but anyways, thank you for inviting me to be with you. I had a wonderful time, however brief and distanced it was last October. Thank you for the Leech Lake rice. My husband and I have had some of that already. Congratulations to your new DEM, and God bless you all in your ministry.
Right. So what I was saying was thank you so much for being with us. And what a privilege to have you spend some time with us as a synod this evening. So thank you once again.